is powerless to keep children from growing up because a child's transition into adulthood is a necessary and inevitable part of life. It is naive of Holden to believe he can even prevent the loss of innocence. And we have like a cool picture of someone becoming an adult. This little picture right here of this sad little boy, I feel like that's kind of where Holden is in life, and he needs to become this man. Situation number 2, the migration of the ducks. Early in the novel, Holden asks his taxi driver where the ducks go in the wintertime. Later on, during a particularly rough night for Holden, he visits Central Park in an attempt to see the ducks that usually inhabit the park's lagoon. Holden walks around the whole lake, but does not see a single duck, unfortunately. And here's a picture of the frozen lake. Woo! So why is this important? Unlike Holden, the ducks are able to adapt to a changing environment. In fact, they understand that migrating in the wintertime is... Unlike Holden, the ducks are able to adapt to a changing environment. They understand that migrating in the wintertime is critical to their survival, and Holden is beginning to understand that migrating into adulthood is critical to his survival as well, because the way he's living right now is very harmful to his health. The migration of the ducks means the inevitability of growth and loss of innocence because the migration is inescapable as the change of seasons. Inescapable and as constant as the change of seasons. But it's really important to remember that every year the ducks return safely, meaning that even though the loss of innocence is painful, it is not dangerous and one is able to survive that transition. So here I have a little graphic of Holden and the ducks in the Central Park Lagoon. So you can see that when the ducks are at the pond, Holden is happy because the things in his life are staying the same. He likes the ducks staying in the lagoon because that means that his life is constant and unchanging, and that's how he wants his life to stay. Because if things in his life don't change, that means that he doesn't have to change and he does not have to become an adult. So, when the ducks leave for the winter, he becomes very sad because it shows him that the life around him is changing, which means that he will have to change as well and become an adult. Situation number 3. Foul language on a school building. When Holden is waiting to pick up Phoebe from school, he sees the words F you written on the walls. He rubs out the initial phrase, but soon sees several more. It is after he sees an F-U engraved in the wall that he concludes, it's hopeless anyway. If you had a million years to do it in, you couldn't rub out even half the F-U signs in the world. It's impossible. So, Holden realizing it's hopeless to erase all the F-U's in the school represents the even bigger picture that he is realizing it is hopeless to rid the world of all its depravity. This realization is a turning point in Holden's life. He is beginning to understand that he cannot preserve childhood innocence because corruption is already present in their life and always will be. It is only a matter of time before children lose their innocence, and Holden is powerless to stop it. Which brings us to our next body paragraph, which is developing into a mature adult. So, just to summarize, Holden's realization in the previous paragraph about how a loss of innocence is inevitable is critical for his development into a mature adult. Alright, so, evidence of maturity number 1. Facing his problems instead of running away. In the beginning and middle of The Catcher in the Rye, Holden is constantly trying to run away from his problems. Example 1. Holden leaves Pensy early because he cannot handle being there any longer. He'd get the heck out of Pensy right the same night and all. He will not wait till Wednesday or anything. He just did not want to hang out there anymore. Example number 2. When Holden briefly visits his home to see Phoebe, he worries about whether his parents will catch him at home. To avoid getting in trouble for once again being expelled from school, he leaves before they can return and catch him. So further evidence of Holden wanting to run away from his problems. At the end of his date with Sally Hayes, Holden asks her to get out of Greenwich Village with her and live with him in a cabin in Massachusetts or Vermont. And the final example is, near the end of the novel, Holden is determined to run away. He's just absolutely done with the world he lives in. He writes Phoebe a note saying that he will probably hitchhike out west that afternoon. Okay, so then we're going to see a change in Holden in the next slide. In the final chapter of the novel, after Holden's experience with the vulgar language on the school building, Phoebe tells him that she is running away with him. In response to this statement, Holden almost passes out cold. Holden tells Phoebe that she is not going anywhere. He has changed his mind. He is not going anywhere. He is going home. Okay, so, Holden wanted to run away from the rest of society because he thought it would save him from its corruption. Hiding from society in an attempt to preserve his innocence prevented Holden from maturing as a person. By isolating himself from society, Holden was able to avoid finding solutions to his problems, for example, dealing with his depression. Letting go of his naive desire to preserve childhood innocence helps Holden mature. This is evident in his willingness to admit his mistakes and face his parents' anger and in him being expelled once again from school. In not running away, Holden shows the readers that he understands hiding from society is not a valid solution to his problems. Okay, so before we get to our next slide, how do you think Holden's reunion with his parents will go over? Evidence of Holden's maturity number 2, allowing children to live their life without his intervention. At the end of the novel, Holden watches Phoebe ride the carousel in the Central Park Zoo. As he watches her, he comes to the conclusion. The thing with kids is, if they want to grab for the ring, you have to let them do it, and not say anything. If they fall off, but it's bad if you say anything to them. So, the gold ring represents the goals children have in life. In order for one's life to have purpose, they must have ambitions they wish to achieve. The motif of falling in the Catcher in the Rye represents a child's transition into adulthood. Throughout the novel, Holden was determined to protect children and himself from going through this transition. Now that Holden understands that the loss of innocence is inevitable, he realizes that he must let children live their lives without his interference. An important part of growing up is having the maturity to accept the things that one cannot change in life, just like Holden is doing here. And here you have a picture of a girl reaching for the golden ring. She has a seatbelt on. Obviously, in The Catcher in the Rye, Phoebe probably doesn't have a seatbelt on, which is why Holden is scared of her falling off. But again, the symbolism of this is allowing children to live their life and reach for their goals without preventing them and trying to prevent their loss of innocence. Evidence of Holden's maturity number 3, admitting himself into a psychiatric hospital. At the beginning and during the middle of the novel, Holden rejects the help of others. The protagonist is not like hearing one of his favorite teachers, Mr. Spencer, say that he is trying to help Holden. Example number 2. When Holden's old student advisor Carl Lusch suggests he go to a psychoanalyst, the protagonist calls him a bastard. Example number 3. Holden tells Phoebe to cut it out when she shows concern that he has been expelled from school once again. So, evidence 3 continued. I don't like how there's no... Okay, so, just a disclaimer. It's a little bit confusing, but The Catcher in the Rye, the story of The Catcher in the Rye is not told in real time. So, what Holden is experiencing in The Catcher in the Rye is has actually happened to him in the past. So the whole novel is him recounting his tale to us. So, on the first page of the novel, Holden tells us that he will tell the readers about this madman stuff that happened to him around last Christmas, just before he got pretty run down and had to come out here and take it easy, which tells the readers that Holden has finally accepted professional help and has admitted himself into a psychiatric hospital. Why do we know this? Well, first, come out here implies that Holden is away from home, most likely away from the city in a psychiatric hospital. And the pretty run down refers to his mental state, which can, explain it, mean his depression. So again, why is this important? So Holden distanced himself from the help of others because he thought it would lead to his corruption. Again, remember how earlier we said that he saw all of the adult world as a source of corruption, so he thought that getting help from adults would also lead to his corruption. However, due to the events in the previous body paragraph, he realizes that the loss of innocence is inevitable, so isolating himself from the adult world is pointless. Admitting himself into a psychiatric hospital shows that Holden understands that accepting the help of others allows one to improve as a person and reach their full potential. An important part of adulthood is realizing that one cannot survive isolated from society, and that looking to others for guidance is a necessary part of life. Above is a video describing depression and the importance of getting help. Watch up to the first minute and a half. What symptoms of depression does Holden possess that are described in the video? The end of the video shows how important it is to get help and the different types of treatment that are available. Take in mind, though, that the treatments that they list in this video are a lot more modern than the treatments that would have been available to Holden. Also, mental health is a lot more accepted in today's society than it was back then. Okay, so conclusion. Holden's fear of adulthood is a universal experience. Conclusion. Holden's transformation shows us that we must overcome our fear of change by accepting that the loss of innocence is inevitable. In the beginning, Holden hangs on to his immaturity because he associates the loss of purity with the transition into adulthood. However, Holden faces many situations that show him how aging cannot be stopped. Due to this realization, Holden begins to make mature choices that will improve his life. He overcomes his fear of maturing and finds the courage to face adulthood, like we all should. My personal opinion. The Catcher in the Rye is my favorite book of this course. I could relate with the struggles Holden was experiencing, but I reached out for help earlier than he did. I do not see Holden as a role model, but rather as a character whose mistakes we can learn from. I'd recommend this book to teenagers around Holden's age, and my age, 15 through 17, and I cried several times through this book because I pitied Holden, and how he was all alone in his struggles.